Thank you, and thanks for having me along to Connections 2015 to share a little bit about the story of 2degrees and the things we've put in place to be successful in a pretty competitive market. And look, I recognise that this is sometimes a little bit of a tough slot, the post-lunch on a Monday afternoon, but rest assured that a presentation on the industry of telecommunications generally fires up any crowd. So enjoy. I'll rip into it. So look, what I wanted to start with was the challenge that we faced 5.5 years ago when we launched, and that was, to move into a market where everybody already had a mobile phone. There were 4.2, 4.3 million mobile phones out there, two massive competitors, a duopoly if you will, already in place, and they had a geographic monopoly. So Vodafone dominated Auckland, and Telecom at the time, now obviously Spark, Telecom dominated the South Island and the bottom half of the North Island. And, a whole lot of regulatory hurdles and a massive amount of investment needed just to even start, just to even get in the game. And I look at, the organisations in the room today, and you all share similar challenges. I think there's a challenger ethos which permeates every organisation just about in this country because of our scale. So hopefully you take something out of the presentation that I share today in terms of how you can be successful too. So what I'm going to cover is a quick history of 2degrees, the kind of key things that we did to drive our success, how we stay ahead of the game. It's all well and good to get the right building blocks in place, but how do you actually stay ahead once you are starting to see some success? And then share some results with you of how successful it has been for us over the past 5.5 years. So firstly, a little bit of history. Like we launched August the 4th, 2009. So we've been in the market just under 6 years. I know a lot of you think that, we've been around forever, and a lot of you have been on us for probably 5 years, haven't you? Yeah, that's right. I can tell by the nervous laughter. Now, we actually, while we launched in 2009, we started, the genesis of 2degrees came in 1999 when, through the Treaty of Waitangi, some 3G spectrum was issued to North Island iwi. They put that 3G spectrum, which is what's used to run a mobile phone network, under a trust called the Hotaki Trust. And they then started talking to an investment banker who just returned from the US, a gentleman, Tex Edwards. And Tex was incredibly passionate about New Zealand having, a competitive telecommunications space. And what he saw was this cosy duopoly. And, New Zealand at the time were 29th out of 32 OECD countries in terms of mobile phone affordability. 29th out of 32. Yeah. So it's pretty obvious to see that there was an opportunity, but he had a lot of work to do. He changed the name of the company to New Zealand Communications, and then he realised that he not only needed to make regulatory changes, so, porting your mobile number, that didn't used to be able to happen. That was down to his work. Mobile termination rates, they used to force a kind of a fake high price on every price point in the market, just something that the government had set and had never been questioned. He went and challenged all those things, but what he then needed was money. Okay, and so he went overseas and he met some people from a company called Trilogy Investment Partners, and they're owned by a billionaire, John Stanton, who he's now on the board of Microsoft globally. And John Stanton and his team have gone around the world, setting up challenger mobile phone networks in the likes of Bolivia, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and you guessed it, now New Zealand, joining illustrious company. But, this was the reality, 29th out of 32 countries in terms of mobile phone affordability. You had Vodafone's pricing was 89 cents per minute, 20 cents for a text message. Can anyone guess what Telecom's pricing was? 89 cents a minute, 20. It's quite a weird price point to hit, 89 cents. Let's both just be that, yes. And we'll go and play in our different markets. So that was what Tex managed to convince to get around $300 million of investment. That $300 million of investment was used to build a mobile phone network that covered 50% of the country. We're now up to covering 90% of the country with our own network, and that's around $500 million of investment. But you think about it, it's quite the risk, isn't it? You know, $300 million, 0 customers, $0 of revenue. Now you better go and make sure this thing works. And that was the challenge, and that's why the building blocks we put in place, and what I'm going to take you through, that was the stakes that were at play when we went into the market. And you know, we're still backed by our investors. We're incredibly lucky, and that's why now, you know, we've just announced that we've purchased a broadband provider down in Christchurch, Snap, and so we're going to be now moving into a whole new market and doing this whole challenges thing all over again. So we're using these lessons. So the key to success, for us, it was putting customers at our heart. And you know what? You go and talk to every single service provider in this country, and they'll probably have some kind of similar mantra. But I think the difference with us is that we believed it, we acted on it, and we actually made it the center of everything that the company did. And so I'm going to talk about these 5 pillars and how we delivered those into the market to drive success. And the first one was we talked to customers. And I know you've got a few presentations on the kind of agenda over the next couple of days around market research and how you go and talk to customers and understand them. One of the key things we did right early on was get a thorough understanding of what customers wanted out of a new telecommunications provider. And so, you know, you look at the words that customers said. They wanted fresh thinking. So, you know, they were sick of the old, exactly the same pricing. They wanted fresh thinking and innovation to be brought into the market. They wanted to be put in control, not have somebody else controlling them. They wanted it to be uncomplicated. They wanted it to be a smart choice. And smart choice was really key to how we built ourselves, because it was going to be quite easy to come in and just be cheap, but that doesn't mean you're the smart choice. That just means you went to 2degrees because they had better prices. And we never wanted to be that. We wanted people to go, oh, you're with 2degrees. Oh, that was a good decision. And that's something we've really strove for. You will see very rarely have we gone to market purely on price. And we wanted to be approachable. So while the other guys were big corporates, you know, with those buildings down at the viaduct, which cost, you know, quite a lot, we wanted nice, humble offices at the top of Upper Queen Street. We painted the building a rather garish blue and shoved a shiny big logo at the top of it. But that was what we wanted. We didn't want to be down there paying more rent and driving up customers' prices. So we talked to customers first. We then recognised that brand was everything. Okay, and this is a Harvard Business School model. This is what we use to build our brand. And you take what a customer says. So if you start on the left, you take what a customer says. You take what your shareholders' opinions are and make sure you factor those in, because ultimately they were the ones that had just spent $300 million. And then you look at the market situation. And I've already said, geographic monopoly, a duopoly. That then helps you to form your positioning. So for us, the positioning was quite clear, right? We wanted to be a challenger brand because we had 2 companies that were so big and so dominant. The real position for us was crystal clear, to be a challenger in that market. That then defines your values, and you boil that down to your brand essence. Our brand essence was smart ideas simply delivered. The easiest way for customers to see value is if they can understand the idea that you're trying to articulate, and that's what was at the heart of our brand, which then goes into our image and our culture. And when we talk about image, your brand is much more than just the advertising that you do. It's much more than your logo or your name. It's every single product, customer interaction. It's how your staff talk to each other when they're going around the office. It's how your staff talk to their friends and family at a barbecue. It's everything that your company does. And one of the most powerful things within 2degrees was an understanding of what we were trying to do in the market. We have around about 90% staff engagement in terms of doing something different that is helping all New Zealanders. And that's a really powerful thing when you harness it, because staff really buy into that and believe it, and it makes them go the extra mile for our customers. And so when I talk to that challenger positioning, there are a lot of different types of challenger. On the top right, you've got where we ended up, which was people's champion. And so that's the Robin Hood, if you like, of the New Zealand telecommunications industry. We actually did an ad where we dressed Rhys Darby as Robin Hood once. That was quite a straight articulation of our challenger positioning. But it was about putting customers first, being innovative, and having staff believe in what we do. You look at a company like Hell's Pizza, for example, they're also a challenger, but we call them a maverick because they just do things for the sake of disruption. They just do things for the sake of it, but still a perfectly viable challenger positioning. And then there's Apple up on the top left, who are a challenger in the way that they actually create new markets. So tablets didn't exist 6 years ago. When we started, the iPad hadn't been invented yet, which is crazy, right? We all think that we've been using these tablet things forever. They hadn't been invented when 2degrees started. So that's a different type of challenger, is one who creates new markets to go and play in. And so now I think, with the wonders of technology, this ad is going to play, and this was the first articulation of 2degrees.
Us Kiwis really are special. The whole world can be connected with 6 degrees of separation. But in little old Godzone, it's only 2.
Everybody knows someone who knows someone.
You think it'd be easy to keep in touch in this small but pert country?
But is it?
I mean, just get locked into a contract for 2 years,
Hope we get porridge.
get a call plane that's harder to solve than the Da Vinci Code, and then ruthlessly select only a small handful of mates to save on calls.
It shouldn't be that hard. And now it isn't that hard. 2 Degrees have built a huge new mobile network dedicated to keeping you, your friends and your money closer together. That's not actually it, by the way. That's just a giant logo.
No contracts. Simple pricing plans that treat everyone equally.
Even you.
And the more people that sign up, the more savings everyone makes. So, who's keen?
No one. Typical.
So, you know, when we put that out, it was a 60-second brand ad, but you think back what we were trying to achieve. We were trying to achieve approachability, we were trying to achieve simplicity, and we also needed people to trust us really quickly. And to do that, we employed somebody that New Zealanders knew, somebody who was a success but people could still relate to, and Rhys was incredibly successful for us. So it's all well and good to be able to articulate your brand, but you have to have the right building blocks in place. And so for us, it was a case of not trying to do everything at once. And you know, this is something that every business can be guilty of. And for us, when we launched, we were just a prepaid company with a 2G network. So in 2009, we were prepaid 2G. After a year, we added 3G and moved into the consumer pay monthly market. After another year, we moved into the business market. After another year, we moved into the government market. And now, as we sit here today, we're now at a position where we just signed up Hawkins Construction, 1,000 connections. So we're in the corporate market, and we're just about to move into the broadband market. But we knew if we tried to do it all at once, we would have crashed and burned, because we wouldn't have been able to keep everybody happy and tell everybody the same story. So what we made sure we did was bite off each bit, be good at it, make sure we were giving customers a great experience, then move on to the next. And always making sure that customers were looked after within each area. And the other thing we were very conscious of is as we moved into each new area, make sure you look after your existing customers. Don't just reward the brand new customers, which is something that we always stood apart from our competitors on. We made sure we have simple products. I said at the start, if your products are complex, customers can't see the value in them. But if they're simple, they understand them and they're more likely to take them up, which was the ethos at the center of our brand. We conversed on social media. Now, you look at that and go, well, of course you conversed on social media. Actually, back in 2009, conversing on social media was quite a new thing. And so we actually went on there and we listened, we engaged, and we actually asked customers where they wanted us to deliver a new innovation next. So we said, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to do something in the data space, minutes, text? And we let them tell us. So it was the ultimate being driven by your consumer as to what the next innovation is that you put into the market. We had a New Zealand contact centre, and it would actually be cheaper for us to move our contact centre somewhere else. And our competitors have, but we have kept a New Zealand contact centre, and while I'm at the company, we won't be moving it, because when we asked New Zealanders what they wanted a New Zealand communications company managed and serviced by New Zealanders. And so that's been something that we've held dear. And also it helps that our calls, 80% are answered within 20 seconds. I just don't know if that can be said for everybody else, but maybe it can, I don't know. If you're not with us, you can give them a try and see how it goes. We also used Icon Media Properties, and by that, it was to make people think that we were bigger than we were at day one. We used massive, large-scale billboards, and we used 60-second TV commercials. They're actually really expensive, and we didn't have that much money. But we used those because it's the ultimate trust that you can put in a company is to manage your mobile phone. How many of you are completely reliant on your mobile phone now? Imagine if that went down, as the XT network did. That was just an example of how it could. I'm not like that. You've got to understand changing customer trends. And you know, this relates to every single industry, but I would say that telecommunications is an extremely fast-moving industry. And you know, I look at the things that we've done. We've always tried to stay one step ahead of changing trends. And I'll just use a sample in the room now. How many of you, when you either just before you go to sleep at night or when you wake up in the morning, have a mobile phone within 2 meters of you? If I could just see a show of hands. You're possibly higher than the 67% that I've got there. But, you know, that's a dynamic that when we launched, iPhone was only just beginning. There did used to be the BlackBerry generation who were quite addicted to that device. But it was a real change when smartphones came in and began to change the way consumers were behaving. And you look at things now, you look at what the iPhone brings, it's a completely different dynamic, and the amount of data that we need to provide. And so us moving from 2G into 3G, now we're putting 4G across the country. We're just launching in 10 cities this month with our 4G network. And that's the kind of thing, because in the past 10 months, data usage on our network has doubled in the past 10 months because everybody is going to their smartphones, checking their email, watching video, and now we've got the likes of Netflix and subscriber video on demand coming into the country, which is a whole new frontier for us in terms of managing that kind of bandwidth. Innovate. When we asked customers what they wanted, they said that they wanted fresh thinking. So what we've done throughout our 5.5 years is try to deliver things which consumers want, which they value, which are simple for them. And in some cases, take shared data as the one example I'll talk about from there. We were the second company in the world to deliver a shared data proposition to New Zealand consumers, which we saw that there was tablet proliferation, USB modems, that kind of thing. So we introduced a plan whereby if you signed up to us, you could share your data with up to 5 other devices just from the one plan. And the customers that went on to that product were our most loyal customers with no intention of ever moving, irrespective of what we did. But it was through having innovations like that and stories like that, fresh thinking, leading the way in New Zealand and not just waiting to see what the other guys did. And I guess if you go back to Tex Edwards and the work that he was doing in the 2000s, 2 competitors in a market is not competition, it's a duopoly. Until you get the 3rd entrant into that market, that's when true competition actually starts and you begin to see benefit, and why we're now in the top 10 out of 34 countries in the OECD. So if they're the kind of 5 pillars, that we really based our success around, it's then important to stay ahead, because it's all well and good to, put innovations out into the market. But let me tell you, the likes of Spark and Vodafone, they do have deep pockets. They've got massive revenues. And as they've seen those decline over time, they've had to act. And we've seen incredibly aggressive plays which are targeted directly at us. So I want to talk just for a minute about how we try to stay ahead of that. The first is continuous monitoring. And so we track, and we've tracked since launch, the percentage of New Zealanders who aren't currently on 2 degrees who are considering coming to us. A simple statistic, right? We just go out there and we say, right now, as of today, are you thinking about coming to 2 degrees? And I'll share the result of that in a minute. We track our brand health. So all our value measures in terms of, do we provide value for money? Do we provide great customer care? We track all of those, and we have since launch. We know if something's going up or going down, and we can address it. We have what's called a Net Promoter Score. Now, for those of you that don't know what a Net Promoter Score is, it basically measures advocacy within your customer base. So would you recommend 2 degrees to your friends or family? And we take those who rate us 9 to 10 out of 10, which is pretty tough for New Zealanders to rate people 9 to 10 out of 10. We take 9 to 10 out of 10 and we subtract those who rate us 0 to 6 out of 10. That gives you your Net Promoter Score. We range between 20 to 30 in terms of Net Promoter Score. Our competitors between minus 20 to minus 30. And a 40-point difference in Net Promoter Score is extremely significant. But you know what? That's what drives your future growth, because if you don't have people out there advocating, it all comes down to advertising, and if we have to rely purely on advertising, we'll never win, because we've got less than 1/10 of the budget of our competitors. And the last one is a research bank. Every campaign that we've put out to market, we have gone and talked to 500 to 600 New Zealanders about. Every single campaign. We ask them, do you remember it? Do you know who actually was the company advertising? What was your key message takeout? How do you feel about 2 degrees as a result of that? And we've tracked that over 5.5 years, and it's incredibly insightful, not only because you can go to an advertising agency and you can say that really didn't work, but you can go to media houses, you can go to your product team, you can say everything, because you've actually got statistics built up over a 5 to 6 year period which say what works and what doesn't. And we've definitely done some missteps, but each time we've learnt from those to make sure that the next one wasn't. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And the other one is we always look for what's next. For us to be successful, we talk about, big gaps in terms of budget and capability and resource. For us, it's looking at what's next, and that is global trends. So whether it's what's happening in the US, the UK, or the Australian markets, we monitor those all the time. Whether it's going to conferences and making sure that we're up to date with how health and activity are merging into mobile phones and wearable devices. We need to be ahead of all those things so that we're making the changes we need and the changes in product we need to keep pace. We track social media for feedback. Every day, our entire company gets an email out saying what the key themes were surrounding 2 degrees on social media that day, which is fantastically powerful, particularly when, we had one where we had a typo on a SIM card. There were only 5,000 units, so it was fine, but it was a micro SIM which was spelt Mirco, M-I-R-C-O. And you wouldn't believe the number of people that wanted to point that out to our company. Social media is a very powerful thing, particularly when it's pointed towards the CEO. And then within your organisation, we've employed a tool called Pass the Idea. Pass the Idea is a software as a service tool developed in New Zealand, and essentially it harnesses the ideas within an organisation to ideate and build on each other's ideas. So you can do it within a team, within a department, or within an organisation, and everybody puts forward their ideas anonymously, but then everybody else builds on those ideas and makes them better. And then the next phase is to vote on the ideas that people think are the strongest. And they're not necessarily any one person's ideas anymore, because everybody has built on them. And that harnesses the power of an organisation to ideate and come up with innovation themselves. And often we get the best ideas out of customer care or our IT department. They're not the people that design our products, but they give some of the best ideas. And the last one is to partner wisely. If you're a small organisation or a comparatively small organisation, as we are, and as a lot of you are, you have to partner wisely with the best people, because otherwise you'll get outspent and outgunned. So we choose our partners incredibly carefully because we know how important it is to sustain us. And so now what I'll finish with is the results that we've achieved. And I guess the one we're proudest of most, we talked about being customer driven. The things we've done have all been based on customer feedback, conversing with customers. We're the most awarded telecommunications company for customer service over the past 5 years, winning just about every award that's out there, most of them 3 or 4 times, which is incredibly satisfying and motivating, and it's what drives our metrics up. Our awareness is up at 98%. No one knew us 6 years ago, and now it's at 98%. I don't know who those 2% are, and I'm not sure what media will ever get to them, but damn it, I'm going to find it. Consideration at 28%. So I mentioned that stat to you earlier. 28% of people who aren't with us right now are considering moving to 2 degrees. Makes it pretty clear that my job is to go and make sure it's easy, clear, and simple for those customers to come across. And lastly, Net Promoter Score is at 26. And the result of that is we've now got over 1.2 million customers in 5.5 years. And that's because people continue, even though we've got 1.2 million customers, continue to be treated as a priority, and that's why they continue to advocate for us. And now as we look at our business today, our most successful campaign last year, you saw the Rhys Darby execution, which is what kicked us off. Our most successful campaign last year didn't have Rhys. It had 4 New Zealand entrepreneurs and said that New Zealand's smartest business people are switching to 2 degrees. And you know, it's amazing how you can grow a brand up over time as long as you continue to put the customer concepts at its heart. And now I'll play you our latest consumer TVC again to see that transition.
The way we use our phones now has completely changed. We think it's time phone plans caught up. 2.5 gig of data, unlimited calls, just $49. It's the phone plan reinvented.
So we've moved on from Rhys, and the reason we did that is we talked to customers, and customers said Rhys was fantastic for talking to a prepaid consumer market, but businesses and corporate companies that we wanted to start talking to said, well, you know, are you guys serious? Are you in it for the long haul? And so we needed to make sure we signaled that in our communications that we were. And so, you know, as I wrap up, everything does start with the customer. From the very first minute that our brand was born, it was based on what customers wanted, and we've tracked that in every campaign we've done, every move we've made. We've tracked it in terms of research to see how that's performing for us. We've been restless in terms of searching for the next innovation because we know that to be successful against, you know, companies that have a department completely based around innovation, we need to be looking every single person in the business for what we can do next to stay ahead. So they're copying us, not us trying to keep up with them, because we know that's when we'll lose. And I guess my last point is that when we do all that, David can actually take on Goliath and be quite successful doing it. And as we move into the broadband market, we're going to have the fun start all over again. Thank you. So I think there's some time for questions if anyone has anything they'd like to ask.
Notwithstanding notwithstanding all the hard work you've done, you said you came into being just before that sort of the iPads and all that stuff. How fortuitous was that? Was that just serendipity?
How fortuitous was that? Look, I think there was probably a little bit of luck in there, but because we would have wanted to launch a whole lot sooner, but we had to have built out our network to a point, and it just happened that coincided with a data explosion. And we were when we launched with 2G, we knew that couldn't last, and so as soon as we launched, we knew we were out of date, and we spent the next 12 months catching up. But luck's an important factor.
Can you tell us how the rate of uptake, so when 2009 I think you mentioned that New Zealand was one of the most expensive countries in the world in terms of mobile phone charges. With the growth and development with 2degrees, now three major players in the market, has it changed our behaviours as a nation? How innovative are we? How saturated are we in terms of our use because of the range of offers now available? So
what I do know is that data has increased just in the past 3 years. It's increased tenfold. So data usage absolutely has, and that is through competitive pricing. It used to be so expensive no one did it. And probably the best way to describe it is if you look at overseas markets, voice usage and text usage is going down. But in New Zealand, voice usage is actually holding firm. And the reason for that is that now people can afford to talk. So we're actually bucking the trends of every other country, because before that, when it was 89 cents a minute, trust me, you didn't want a long voice call on the mobile. And we actually, our industry trained New Zealanders not to talk. We need to get better at that.
As a parent, I quite like that. It's quite nice to think that the kids might phone instead of texting. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
How sustainable is it? I mean, are you making any money?
Yes. So we're now in our third year of EBITDA positive. Look, it's a massive investment, but I guess the signal that we're still willing to go and buy an ISP and move into new sectors means that we've been doing pretty well. But that you do see a shift towards business advertising, and that's because you've got to go where there are profitable sectors to get a return for your shareholders.
Thank you.
Oh, you're not allowed to ask a question, Nat.
Malcolm, you've had the pleasure of sitting around our board table, and certainly from our perspective it was wonderful to have you there. And you know the struggle that we've had in some of the conversations around where do you start, and particularly with sport organisations, you've got limited resource, potentially limited capability. If there was one thing an organisation in this room could do to better understand their customer, what would that be?
I think, and I can talk from experience, I think the biggest challenge that organisations have, such as athletics as well, is when we talked to customers, it was extremely difficult to talk to people that weren't just the extremely committed few, and they don't always give you the best advice about how your sport can grow. You need to talk to the whole market, and that takes budget. And it's not Gemba, it's not that kind of research. It's actually going and talking to a whole market and understanding what's going to fuel your growth. And in the case of athletics, it drove us in terms of the Rotorua Marathon. There was a big move towards social running. And that's something, the kind of trend that you need to see, but you need to see it early so that you can make sure that you position yourself for that.